All right, and we're live. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for spending your Friday here with me. I am also here with Den, who is helping with moderation. So if you leave your comments in YouTube, he'll see them. He'll make sure I see them between stories. You can always support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. It's Christmas-ish. You could do it now. You can also subscribe for free at friendlyatheist.com. So make sure you do that if you're not subscribed already. We have a bunch of stories. And quick show note, next week, because of the holidays, I will not be here on Friday night probably, but I will do this Saturday night. Who knows what that means? Will there be more people or no people? I don't know yet. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with, I think, the funniest thing I saw this week, because the Catholic League, which is a right wing Catholic group that's not actually connected to the Vatican, but totally pretends to be, they just put up a billboard in Madison, Wisconsin. And Madison, Wisconsin happens to be the headquarters of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And that's why they put up their billboard in Madison, Wisconsin. And the new billboard wishes everyone a warm, festive holiday season. Yeah, I'm absolutely kidding. They did not do that at all. This is the billboard they put up in Madison. Graphic design is their passion. Let's read through this together because there's a lot going on here. Um, First thing there says atheists strike out at Christmas. Okay, I didn't know there was a game going on, but all right, fine. Weird to use a baseball metaphor in December, which is when everyone's thinking about baseball. All right. Celebrating winter solstice is a child's game. Again, didn't know it was a game. Didn't actually know we were really celebrating the solstice, but whatever. Why is that a child's game? Does that mean it's easy to celebrate solstice but hard to celebrate Christmas? Because that doesn't make any sense, because Christmas stuff is all around everybody. So if anything, it's very easy to play Christmas and very hard to play literally anything else. Anyone else's holidays, much more difficult this time of year. But then comes the best line of them all. This is our season, not yours, which is just so petty and pointless. But what, again, who decided to claim this season as like atheists? I don't get it. This is our season, not yours. What does that mean? Do the Catholics own the holiday? Do they own December 25th? Do they own the entire winter? I don't know what they're getting at. Even if you take them at face value, like, what do they actually mean? Well, they mean the holiday season. What does that mean? It's ours. Like, what? No one else is allowed to celebrate anything? Jewish people are out of luck this time of year because Hanukkah was trying to get in on all the Christmas fun. Like, it's such a stupid thing to say. But if you actually think about it, it doesn't even make any sense. I'm going to come back to the sign in a second. But the thing they're pretty much responding to is this sign that the Freedom from Religion Foundation has put up for years in the Wisconsin State Capitol building and in some cities around the country. But basically, whenever there's a nativity scene on public grounds, FFRF has tried to put up a display too. The Satanic Temple has done a lot of that in recent years as well. Basically saying, all right, if you want to put up a nativity scene, well, it's an open forum. So we're going to try to put up our sign as well. And we're going to be in your face about it too. And in this case, the FFRF sign says, at this season of the winter solstice, let reason prevail. And then they go hard in explaining, hey, we're atheists. There are no gods, no devils, no angels, no heaven or hell. There is only our natural world. Religion is but myth and superstition that hardens hearts and enslaves minds. And look, is it in your face? Yes, it is. But they're basically saying, hey, it's the winter solstice. Let reason prevail. And also, we have beliefs too. If you don't like the aggressiveness of that sign, well, what do you think the nativity is? It's just another way of telling people this is what we believe. all the rest of you who don't accept the baby Jesus are going to burn in hell for all eternity. I would argue that's just as aggressive, if not more so, because at least this sign isn't sentencing anyone to eternal torture. But going back to the ugly billboard that the Catholic League put up, so they're saying celebrating winter solstice is a child's game. Again, it's a stupid thing to say because FFRF did not say accept winter solstice or else. But anyway, this is our season, not yours. Celebrate the birth of Christ. I don't know how to take that. Is that a threat? Is there a period after that? Is there an exclamation point? Like, the lack of punctuation makes it very hard to parse. And then Merry Christmas, paid for by the Catholic League. Okay, fine, weird. I want to show you another thing they issued with this. They put out a press release. And this is the press release that the Catholic League put out about this, courtesy of their leader, Bill Donahue. Every year, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a group of Christian-hating atheists, likes to erect a silly winter solstice exhibit at the Capitol in Madison, Wisconsin. Well, this year they're in for a surprise. We've decided to send these activists a lesson, reminding them that the Christmas season is our season. We rule, they lose. Apparently, a 12-year-old edgelord is the copywriter for all of their press releases. What the hell is this? We rule, they lose. Bill Donahue is like an 80-year-old man. It's just the dumbest group of people. And this is exactly the way they operate too. It's always, it's us versus the world because we're Catholics and we're persecuted. Like, my dude, you own the Vatican. Your people as a religion are among the wealthiest, maybe the wealthiest group out there. And no one is anti-Catholic, not about Christmas. No one's anti-Christian. FFRF is not a group of Christian-hating atheists. They work with Christian groups on their lawsuits sometimes. They're basically atheists who say, well, if Christians have access to this space, we're going to try to use the space as well. And if you're persecuting actual persecution against non-Christians, yeah, we're going to write you letters and tell you why you got the law wrong. I don't know. I don't see that as Christian hating, but Bill Donahue and the Catholic League thinks everything is persecution. You know how there's that group 1 Million Moms that's like one angry evangelical white woman, and she just says like, I saw gay people on TV. Let's shut down this show. That's what Bill Donahue is. And anytime anyone in the public eye says anything critical of the Pope, rightly critical, if they are like, well, the Catholic Church settled a sexual abuse lawsuit, he's like, how dare you persecute Catholics? That's what this guy is. I'll tell you more about him in a second. But like, think about what they're doing over the holidays. They're saying, we don't like FFRF sign, so we put in a billboard because we rule and they lose. Which again, like I said, very petty, very childish. Think about how much better it would have been, in theory, if he put up the billboard that said, the Catholic League just made a multi-$1,000 donation to a local food pantry in Madison, Wisconsin. You know, so while the atheist groups are putting up signs and billboards, we're actually helping the hungry. Now, mind you, atheist groups, including FFRF, have given to charity. That's not my point. But like, if they put up a billboard that said, we're helping the needy, and they're putting up billboards, that might have actually been pretty effective. But they don't care about helping the poor. This is what Jesus means to guys like Bill Donahue and the people who are petty enough to work under him. Jesus is nothing more to them than a weapon to use against everyone else while you are defending the Catholic Church against allegations of wealth hoarding and all the child abuse and sex scandals. Like, helping other people, that's for losers. Dunking on atheists with the advertising equivalent of an ugly Christmas sweater, that is somehow a victory because, again, as I was told, they rule and we lose. And then Bill Donahue spoke to the Christian Post about this, trying to defend his stupid little stunt here. Look at what he told the Christian Post. Donahue told CP that he hopes our billboard emboldens Catholics, letting them know that we will not be bullied by our adversaries. First of all, it's not going to embolden anybody, much less Catholics, because no one driving past the stupid billboard is going to have time to read the whole thing. Also, it's very ugly. Also, who's bullying you? Again, imagine how pathetic you have to be to say, it is Christmas. Every TV show, everything around us celebrates the birth of Christ. And some people have the audacity to say, hey, we're also here. There are people who don't believe in any of that who also exist this time of year because you don't own December or winter. And Bill Donahue's like, what? You're pretending you exist in the holiday season? That's persecution against us. Who's bullying Catholics? I don't get it. That's how bad this guy is, though. So anyway, how did the Freedom from Religion Foundation respond? Because this billboard was clearly aimed against them. Here's what FFRF said on the internet. They quoted the billboard, which, by the way, look at how their website is formatted. You can't even read the ugly billboard on the Catholic League's website, even when linked to. But anyway, FFRF says the Scrooges at the Catholic League really know how to spread love and joy during the holiday season. Happy holidays. Basically an eye roll against what the Catholic League just did. I mean, is it really a war on Christmas when one side is throwing weak punches and the other side is yawning? I don't know. If you're not familiar with the Catholic League, though, I want to show you one thing. Just so you understand, like, not only is the billboard ugly, I want you to know more about the group that decided to put this up. I'm going to show you every year, all nonprofit groups have to fill out a tax form for the IRS that says this is how much money we took in. This is where our money is going. It's a form of transparency because if you're a nonprofit and you're not paying taxes, well, you should tell people where the money is going. That's the compromise, right? Let me show you the Catholic League's 990. That's the form we're talking about from 2023. And I want to do this for a reason. But check this out. Here is their 990 for the Catholic League. And I want to zoom in on one thing here. Look at how much money they have. Look at this. It doesn't matter. End of the year. How much money do they have? Look at that bottom number. $53.7 million. They are sitting, the Catholic League, on $53.7 million. And yet they won't spend, what, a few $100s to hire a graphic designer with any talent? They're not using that money for charity. They're not doing anything useful with it. They're paying for a stupid billboard to fight a war that only they are fighting. All that money, nothing valuable coming from it whatsoever. Another thing you should also see is how much money does Bill Donahue get paid? Well, guess what? We could find that out too, because in the 990, if you scroll down, there's Bill Donahue. He is the president. He works whatever hours a week. How much does he get paid? Look at this. He gets paid $653,000, and he gets an additional $72,500 for other compensation. So this guy's making nearly $750,000 a year to do what he does, which is put out press releases anytime anyone's critical of the church. Which, by the way, I've seen him issue press releases after Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update does a joke about Catholic predators. And he's like, this is discrimination against atheists. Someone hand me some dollar bills so I can blow my nose. I don't know. Even their vice president's making, like, what is that? Almost $400,000. Like, this is an organization that has so much money and no ability to do anything of value with it. That's how you know this is a grift. FFRF, by the way, that an organization that I think has maybe twice as many staffers as the Catholic League, they have net assets that are less than half of the Catholic League. And you know how much work they're putting out there. I don't understand how bad It's amazing how bad the Catholic League is at doing just about anything. I realize the purpose of the billboard that they just put up in Madison is to get publicity, and me talking about it at all, I know, is giving them what they want. But maybe this backfires. Because after all, if they need a billboard to trash atheists at Christmas, it kind of tells you like who these people are and how few concerns they actually have. I mean, Donahue has been able to weaponize faith-based outrage for decades now with the help of a professional-sounding organization in a way he never could if he was just some angry dude who blogged out of a basement, right? That's why you should never take the Catholic League seriously. It's just one dude pretending who runs an organization pretending to represent Catholics across America, even though he only represents like the extreme right-wing Catholics out there, which is not even the majority of US Catholics. He has no actual ties to the Vatican or anything like that. Like I said, it's very much like 1 Million Moms, which is one angry Christian woman who just issues press releases from her basement, basically. Donahue uses the Catholic League to sound more important than he really is. And any reporters you see who cite the Catholic League without acknowledging that it's just one angry rich dude who just picks fights with everybody while pretending to represent the Catholic wing of the church. If you don't say that, you are committing journalistic malpractice. You have to acknowledge this is just one dude with a lot of money who just pretends to represent the entire religion. Anyway, stupid billboard put up there by a bunch of people who have too much money to do anything useful with it. All right, I'll stop there. What questions do we have here before I move on to the next story? Oh, thanks for that donation, Dusty Dark Horse. Christians just wish they were still in their high school. Well, apparently, and that's who they hire to do all their copywriting, apparently. Right? They just go to a local high school, say, hello, we're Catholics. Will you write some angry response for us? And we'll put it on a billboard. And then that's how they do it, I assume. The billboard designer is also their webmaster from 1996. I know you're joking, but you're not really joking, because if you go to the Catholic League's website, you can tell it has not been updated since someone put it up online decades ago. Again, so much money, can't hire a web designer, can't hire someone to make you look like a professional organization, because Bill Donahue, I assume, just hoards all the money for himself. Like the solstice wasn't celebrated by pagans for thousands of years until the Christians co-opted the solar deity model for Jesus. This is another point. It's our season, not yours. It's not even your season. You're right. Like, you took it from other people to begin with. Unbelievable. Wait, why is our exhibit silly when theirs is not? Yeah, it's a good question. If you think that what FFRF's... Yeah, by the way, that poster of theirs has been around for like 30 years. I don't know why that one's silly, but writing something petty in the same type of font and everything on a billboard is not. Personally, I'm not a fan of either billboard, really, because it doesn't have the impact it might have had once. The atheist one, I should say. But if there's a nativity scene up, I'm all for groups putting anything up. You know what I mean? Just show people there are other groups in town. But you're right. Why is one bad, but theirs is not? Why is one silly, but not theirs? I think this is what happens when you have so much money. You have no one around you willing to tell you, maybe this is a bad idea and you should rethink it. Most people celebrating Christmas in the USA are not that religious. Most get caught up in consumerism. I think you're right. I mean, I don't know about most, but I think you're right. A lot of people in the US, it's fun this time of year. I have a tree up. I'm doing presents. I'm doing stuff on Christmas. It has nothing to do with Jesus, but that's the whole point. Like, plenty of people are fine with Christmas. It doesn't have to be a religious thing for anybody. So what are they so mad about? Even then, Christians could take credit for that. They can just say, glad you're celebrating it. Maybe now you could let me tell you about Jesus. That's what they do all the other times. And the Catholic League is like, how dare you other people exist? Hello, everyone. Amazing. I made it on time. Welcome, Wendy. I love watching the video. Happier if I get to see you live. I appreciate that. Thank you for being here with me. All right. Let me close out some tabs here. I'm going to move on to a different story in just a second. This is one I was just putting together today. Um, in Texas, there is a law in the books that says it's basically a book banning law that Republicans in Texas passed last year, and it basically says, hey, if you are running a school library, you're not allowed to have any material in it that is sexually explicit, not okay for teenagers, which is their way of purging LGBTQ books and things like that. Well, a very interesting thing happened this week because the superintendent of the Canyon Independent School District sent out an email to a parent, I guess responding to a question. And there was something very interesting I'm going to share with you in just a second. Let me show you the law they passed in Texas first. This is House Bill 900. It was passed in 2023, but this is the version they passed. And you could see here, it's the top page of this right here talks about school library collection. Basically, what are you allowed to have in your library? And look at number 2. School districts have to include a collection development policy that A, prohibits the possession, acquisition, and purchase of you're not allowed to have in your library. And then look at, where is it? Roman numeral 2 there, or 2. Library material rated sexually explicit material by the selling vendor. Okay, so this is the bill they passed. Nothing sexually explicit, educationally unsuitable, pervasively vulgar. All right, so this is the bill they passed. So after that, this week, this superintendent of a school district in Texas responded to a parent who said, hey, I went to my kid's junior high and there was no Bible there. Did you all remove the Bible from your shelves? And this is what the superintendent, Dr. Daryl Flushy, I don't know. This is what he said. He cited HB 900, and look at what he said starting here. This standard for library content prohibits books that have one instance of sexual content as described above. Therefore, HB 900 doesn't allow numerous books, and then underlined in red here, including the full text of the Bible, to be available in the school library. This superintendent said, I'm sorry, we can't have the Bible in the school library because no sexually explicit material is allowed. And then the superintendent goes on to say, there are 30 titles available in our junior high library that are Bible stories or portions of the Bible. If you would like to review those titles, our library books are searchable online, blah, blah, blah. You can visit the link below. But look at the next paragraph. Additionally, if any student would like to have a Bible, hey, we have strong connections with local churches that are happy to donate a Bible upon request. We're more than willing to assist a student who would like to access a Bible by arranging this from one of our partnering churches. And I'm going to overlook the whole why does a public school district have partnering churches thing for a second here. But come on, it's kind of hilarious that Texas passed a book ban and this superintendent's like, okay, then I'll remove the Bible from the shelves because there's a lot of sexy sex in it. Because the way they define sexually explicit think about what's in the Bible. You have incest, you have sexual assault, you have allusions to bestiality, you have some hardcore stuff in there that is not supposed to be for kids. But it's not like a young adult novel where some gay kid is experimenting with the sexuality. And so the goal for Texas Republicans was to ban all the books about LGBTQ people, and the superintendent got rid of the Bible. But basically, you could tell why the superintendent wrote that letter. He's telling this parent, don't blame me. I didn't want to remove the Bible from the shelves, but the law made me, which is great. He's like, blame the law if you have a problem with it. And he's not wrong to interpret the law that way. Because if you take away the religious context, and I just told you what sort of stuff was in the Bible, actual passages, maybe where Lot's daughters get their daddy drunk and then sexually assault him, you would say, that doesn't seem appropriate for children. But Republicans obviously never intended for their book ban to apply to books they like the Bible. So now they got to do damage control, right? So earlier this month, there was a school board meeting, and one Christian parent, at least one, told the school board, like, you guys, the Bible has to be available for kids because it's the Bible. I wanted to play you one clip. She didn't sound as crazy as other Christians you've heard, but she basically didn't try to patch up the GOP created loophole. She just said, hey, everyone, we all need to contact our elected representatives to make sure the Bible can get back on the shelves. And then, this is interesting. Was this week? This is on December 19th, yesterday, as I'm making this video. A local news outlet reported that we spoke with the school district, and they said, stop telling people we banned the Bible, basically. And look at this. This is what the local news outlet said. After receiving clarification from Representative Jared Patterson, who is the Republican who sponsored House Bill 900, we received clarification from him regarding library content, and we reevaluated the guidelines and are pleased to have the Bible available in each of our school libraries. Okay, so the school district's like, dude, why is everyone calling us? They're so mad at us. They think we banned the Bible. And the school district's like, blame the lawmakers. They're the ones that told us to get rid of the Bible. And they said, okay, we spoke with the Republican who wrote the bill, and the Bible's back up on the shelves. Okay, fine. But like, what did he tell you? Why is the Bible's sexual explicitness okay, but what? Young adult novels that have sex in it are not okay? Like, what did he tell you? I'm very curious. And this article didn't explain anything. And I was very curious what the hell happened, right? Because I want to know, how did they explain all that? Well, it turns out Jared Patterson, the guy who sponsored the bill, he heard that this school district had taken the Bible off the shelves. And he apparently wrote them a very angry letter on Wednesday of this week. And I want you to take note of a couple things. I'm going to show you this letter. He refers to his bill as a book ban. He uses the word ban repeatedly in this letter, and that's something Republicans avoided. They're like, we're not banning books. We just want sexual stuff off the shelves. We're not banning anything. Well, this guy's like, all right, now that the bill is passed, I'm going to call it a ban over and over. Take note of that. But he basically, in the letter to the school district, just blames the superintendent for taking the Bible off the shelves, even though his law said you got to take sexually explicit stuff off the shelves. Okay, let's go through a part of this here. This is the letter. Again, it's to the superintendent. It's dated December 18th. It's from Jared Patterson. And I'm going to scroll down to this paragraph right here. Let me be very clear. The Bible and other religious texts, he doesn't care about the rest of them, are protected under HB 900. Moreover, the Bible does not contain sexually explicit content as defined by HB 900. Any assertion to the contrary is either rooted in ignorance of state law or an open hostility to the will of the people. Like, hold on. Wait, we'll stop there. How does the Bible not contain sexually explicit content? If you are online right now, just do a Google search for the Bible and sexually explicit passages. And there are so many. There are so many descriptions of passages. There are so many actual verses that you should be disturbed by. Let's just do one right now. Here, I'll give you one. Ezekiel 23:20. That's always a classic. Here we go. Let me share this with you here. There we go. Ezekiel 23:20. I'll remove me from here. There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emission was like that of horses. I'm just saying, if that passage was like in a young adult novel, I'm pretty sure Christians would be like protesting nonstop outside school board meetings. Okay, if that doesn't qualify as sexually explicit, what are we even doing here? You know what I mean? But let's go back to this letter for a second. Next paragraph. I honestly cannot grasp how you could arrive at this decision. Perhaps you disagree with our fight against radically explicit content in public schools. Not only is your interpretation of my bill completely wrong, but your decision to ban the Bible was likely illegal. Texas law clearly states religious texts must be available to students in schools. And then he goes on to say there is a section in the Texas Education Code that says holy texts are allowed, basically. And he's some little part at the end. I've discovered you did not publicly post that you are banning the Bible as you posted about removing actual explicit content. Is there a reason behind your lack of transparency? Whatever. Patterson is so mad that a superintendent read his law and then said, all right, sexual stuff is out. Let's get rid of all the sexual stuff. And now this Republican's like, why did you take my bill seriously? You weren't supposed to. It was an anti-gay bill, not an anti-Bible bill. So let me show you what the Education Code says, since Jared Patterson makes a big deal of it. This is what the Education Code says in Texas. This is section 28.002, which is specifically the section he cited. And it says, for all public schools in the state, there is a required curriculum, and it has to include an enrichment curriculum that includes religious literature, including the Old Testament and New Testament and its impact on history and literature. So what Jared Patterson was saying is, this is already the law. You have to teach the Bible in school this way. But then last year, the Republicans passed this other law that said you got to get rid of stuff that has sexually explicit content in it. Now, there is an easy way to follow both of those laws at the same time. You get rid of the entire Bible, which has a lot of sexually explicit stuff in it. And if you have to teach stories from the Bible for like its impact on history and literature, you could say, okay, in English class, we're doing a unit on ancient mythology. So we'll study Greek myths and we'll look at the book of Genesis. You could totally do that. Now you are covering the Bible, you are doing it in a secular way, and you are not teaching sexually explicit content. So there is a way to follow both of these rules without anything hypocritical going on. And that is what the superintendent did. He got rid of the full text and he kept the rest of the Bible, whatever they used in the curriculum. And this Republican is so mad he figured out a way to do it. So this idea that the law already said you have to have the whole Bible in schools. No, it didn't. The Texas Education Code does not say you got to have the entire book available. It just says you got to teach about the Bible. So I don't know. This Republican doesn't seem to know what he is talking about. Not news, I know, but there you go. The same rules, by the way, the Texas Education Code say students have to be taught about the importance of mental health and suicide prevention and things like that. And I guess my question is, if there is a young adult novel that discusses mental health and suicide prevention, or let's say it included a main character who was exploring his or her body or experimenting with stuff. But the whole purpose of the novel was to say, because this teen had an outlet and because they were experimenting and learning about themselves, it was good for their mental health. And it actually decreased the likelihood this kid was going to do anything like self-harm. Well, which law do we listen to? The one that bans obscenities or whatever, obscene books? Or do we say, well, the Texas Education Code says that type of stuff is actually required? Like, which of those should take precedent? I have no idea because the Republican laws don't make any sense. But I wish Patterson would give a better explanation of which books are okay and which books are not. Because if we're going by the Education Code and not the stupid law that he wrote, well, I just made a case for why certain books with sexual content should be allowed. So I don't know what this guy wants. By the way, this is the same dude. Why the superintendent decided to remove the book, the Bible, the full text of the Bible from the shelves. Maybe it's because this dude, Jared Patterson, tweeted this over the summer. Don't worry, next session we're doubling down, including felony charges for superintendents who expose children to sexually explicit content. Your days of sexually indoctrinating minor Texans are numbered. Okay, it's a stupid thing to say, but even if you take this dude at face value, Sounds like the superintendent should play it safe instead of sorry. So, all the more reason to remove the Bible from the shelves because it has sex in it. Like, what does Patterson want here? He's literally threatening these superintendents with felony charges, possibly saying they should go behind bars. They should be found guilty of some crime. And this superintendent's like, well, I don't want that to happen to me. So let me follow your law. And now Jared Patterson's mad that people took him seriously. Like, this is the hypocrisy and stupidity of the entire Republican Party for you. So here's where we're at. We have a Republican-sponsored book ban that apparently carves out an exception for the Christian holy book and literally nothing else. I mean, I don't think the Bible should be banned from school libraries because I don't think books should be banned from libraries at all if there is a reason they might need to be out there. And I think important, critically acclaimed books, just like religious texts, should be available to students if they want it for whatever reason. I think that's a good thing. More access to more books is good. And if children are curious, even if they're curious about Christianity, yeah, fine, go explore, go read. But that's the difference between reasonable people and Republican zealots. We want students to have access to books with content that might make some people uncomfortable. Yeah, that's part of the package. They just want to create obstacles so students aren't exposed to anything they don't like unless it comes in like Jesus-themed packaging. So incest and rape, for example, are perfectly fine to Republicans as long as it's surrounded by other stories of the Christian God as well. I don't know, you make sense of it. In the meantime, the headline here is a superintendent got rid of the Bible because Republicans made him do it. And then the Republican came back and said, that's not what I meant by ban all the sexually explicit books. And now everyone should be laughing at the Republicans. That's the moral of this story. Okay, I'm going to stop there for now. What other thoughts do we have out there? Oh, thank you, Mark, for that super sticker. I appreciate that. So they made an exemption specifically for their Bible because of special treatment. Yes, that is exactly what Jared Patterson did because he doesn't know what he's doing and he doesn't know how to write laws. He's just fighting for culture war bullshit. He's not actually trying to help kids. If I was a student aware of this case, I'd be the first one in the library finding those passages. I'd highlight them for the next student. Oh, yeah. And while you're at it, Carla, put up like posters with Bible verses. Like find the most sexually explicit Bible verses you can and like put them up on a poster, hang them around the school. Don't tell people where it's coming from. Just say, like, yeah, these two women decided to get their father drunk and then assault him. And wait till Christians get mad about it, because you know who hasn't read the Bible? Most of these Christians. So they don't know where this stuff is coming from. It would be a great school project. I bet the Catholic Church misses the days the Bible and services were only available in Latin. You know, if they did that, Bill Donahue would be like, what? Why are you trying to prevent Catholics from accessing the Bible? How dare you? Thanks, Elizabeth, for that donation. Incest and rape in the Bible, okay. In Game of Thrones, oh my God, the devil. That's pretty much how it is. If it's in their book, everything's okay. If Donald Trump sells autographed Bibles, which is a thing he's doing, they're fine with it. But if like Chapel Roan did it, they would flip their minds. They would lose their shit. I can't do words today. Isn't the Kama Sutra a religious text? I don't think it is, but that would be funny. It's educational if you want to make that argument. So, can we petition the DA to press charges against Representative Patterson because he made a special exemption for the Bible? Obviously, it would never work, but I do want Patterson to clarify which books are okay and which ones are not. Like, you can't say, look, the old law said the Bible's okay, even though my new law says it's not okay. And how come the rest of you don't understand that it's always fine if you're doing it in the name of Jesus? All laws can be manipulated if you're doing it in the name of Christ. That's fine. That's the Republican motto. You can do anything you want as long as you just say Jesus 4 times along the way. Trump can break every commandment, but as long as he says, "Oh yeah, I love the evangelicals," they're fine with anything he does. All right. Subscribe to the Atheist Holy Book. There you go. Let me pull up the next story here just a second and get rid of tabs. There we go. Okay. So you remember what happened in the Iowa state capitol last Christmas? In the state capitol, they had like an open forum in the building. Anyone can apply to put up a display in the state capitol. And so you had your nativity scene put up, I think, by a right wing Catholic group. And then the Freedom from Religion Foundation put up one of their displays of like the founding fathers' nativity that looks like some founding fathers and the Constitution. And then the Satanic Temple put up a display of Baphomet with their 7 fundamental tenets that say, like, be nice, be kind, be compassionate. And then some right wing Christian zealot vandalized the satanic display, and he was later arrested and charged with the hate crime. And it was all sorts of controversy and stuff like that. Well, it turns out recently the Satanic Temple wanted to host a holiday celebration inside that same state capitol in Iowa. And the Department of Administrative Services, the DAS, this is the group that approves those permits, decides what goes on in the building. They basically told the Satanic Temple, yeah, you're not allowed to do that. And this is what they told the group, because they initially approved the permit to have a holiday party. And then this is what they told the Des Moines Register. After careful consideration of administrative rule and DAS policy, I determined the totality of the event request to include elements that are harmful to minors and therefore denied the request. And that's from Adam Steen, who is the director of the Iowa Department of whatever the hell that is. So he said, I looked at their request and I believe it's harmful to children. And so I took it off the calendar. So basically, the Satanists rightly applied for a permit. They got an initial okay. And now this guy comes around and says, you can't do it anymore. And first of all, it is very rich to hear any Republican talk about other groups being harmful to minors when their party's policies and their overwhelmingly Christian base have routinely hurt children. We just found out that they're passing like the budget bill in Washington, D.C., that removes like $190 million from pediatric cancer research because they don't want to use money for that sort of thing. I mean, this is what their party does. But furthermore, what is this idea that they're trying to protect the kids? They use that as a rallying cry against everything they don't like. We can't have trans people reading to kids in the library because we got to protect the children. We can't teach kids about sex education because we got to protect the kids. Like they always say everything they do, book banning. It's all about protecting the kids when actually all they're doing is hurting the kids themselves. But I went ahead and looked at the actual details of what the Satanic Temple was proposing to do in Iowa's state capitol. And I want to show you what they plan to do, what they said they were going to do. And you tell me what part of it was harmful to kids. Okay. So first thing I'm going to show you here is the announcement they first made on Facebook. This is the Satanic Temple of Iowa. And look what they said here. There's the announcement, December 6th. Get ready for satanic holiday joy at the Iowa State Capitol. We'll be kicking off at 9:30 a.m. with our display and altar, as well as an ornament making station and coloring pages for the kids. Ornament making, yeah. We'll do that until supplies run out. At 11 a.m., we'll be singing satanic carols. Great. Join us at noon for a Krampus costume contest. Love it. Then at 2 p.m., we will have a ritual to celebrate Saturnalia and Sol Invictus. Don't miss out on the fun. Hail Satan. Sounds lovely. Sounds like a great time. I don't know what exactly there is harmful to children. Is it the costumes? I don't know. So I asked the Satanic Temple, like, okay, that's what you guys said. I don't see anything on there that is bad for kids. Can I see your actual application? Like, what did you tell the Iowa DAS? What did you tell the people running this building you were going to do? And I got a hold of the application, and this is the part that is substantive. I'm not showing you like the contact information, but this is what they actually sent to the building, to the DAS. They said, look, we're going to set up at 8 o'clock, satanic holiday carols. We're going to sing some songs. You can see the song list. Depeche Mode, Velvet Underground. It's fine. And they also said, under discussion, we can change the songs. If you want us to change the songs, we could change it up too. They also said there's the ornaments, social time. We're going to make the ornaments from clear plastic globes and items that can be placed in or on them. Sounds fine. Krampus costume contest. Winners determined by audience votes. Ritual. And then we'll clean up after ourselves. Like, again, this is what they submitted. I dare you, you tell me what in that list is harmful to children, because the correct answer is nothing. What the hell there would be harmful to kids? Nothing. Nothing. So the only difference between this event and a more traditional Christmas event that you might see in the state capitol is that this one doesn't honor or praise Jesus. That's it. There's nothing else happening here. So I spoke to their satanic minister, Mortimer Adremelech, and he told me last weekend his group was in regular conversation with the DAS office over the past several weeks. And he told me that if there were any issues with any part of their event that the state thought would have violated the agreement, the contract they signed, that they were open to making any necessary changes, but the state didn't tell them to revise anything. The state never said anything was a problem. I asked them, like, well, what about the ritual? Did they ask you, like, well, what do you mean by that? Is a ritual? Are you going to sacrifice a goat or something like that? And he said the ritual was about finding light in the darkest nights of the year. Whatever they were going to do to celebrate optimism at this time of year or something. But then they got the event canceled, right, last week. And this is what the Satanic Temple then announced after it was canceled. You can see the picture here, event canceled. And they said, we're saddened to announce that our event at the Iowa State Capitol has been forcibly canceled by the Iowa DAS. We have made every effort to work with them to ensure a successful event, but after over 2 months on the official calendar, we've been informed our event will no longer be allowed. Our goal was to promote tolerance and acceptance of diverse religious beliefs with the theme of finding a light in the darkness and welcoming the darkest nights of the year with joy and camaraderie. We are no strangers to obstacles in advocating for religious pluralism and freedom of speech, and we will continue to fight for the rights of Satanic Temple members in our local community. Goes on to say, support the 7 tenets, hail Satan, hail Iowa. Okay, so there you go. Forcibly canceled. That statement didn't say anything directly against Steen, the guy running that organization. Didn't say anything about how their event was not harmful to minors. But that claim was later echoed by the Iowa governor, Kim Reynolds. This is what she told some right-wing outlet. This is Kim Reynolds here, the Republican governor. Our state capitol, our state government, trying to move this up here, is always going to be concerned about the well-being of children. The Iowa State Capitol complex is a place that is open to the public, where children and families routinely visit. Because of this, the state's event policy takes into consideration conduct that would be harmful to minors. This satanic event, which specifically targets children, is harmful to minors, and so it was denied. I showed you what they were going to do. Notice that Kim Reynolds never says, here's the thing they were going to do that we're not okay with. Never, because there wasn't anything. She just said, it was bad for kids, and then runs away and lets you fill in the blanks, because she knows the only people who trust the words that come out of her mouth are other gullible Republicans that are like, Satanists, they must be evil. And then they just assume that because these are not educated people here. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, I don't know why the media isn't asking them, the people with access to these people, Steen, Reynolds, ask them what was it that was harmful to kids. They didn't do that. The omission suggests to me that both of them, the governor, the guy running the Capitol complex, were more interested in keeping Satanists out of the building than protecting children, right? By the way, Adam Steen, the guy running the DAS, he is a credentialed minister, according to his bio. And Kim Reynolds is a Christian nationalist who has publicly urged Iowans to read through the Bible on a daily basis each year until the Lord comes. I think they just want to knock Satanists out. And there's one other thing I forgot to mention here, which is that earlier this year, you may recall, because I made a video about this, the Satanic Temple also wanted to do a book reading inside the Iowa Capitol for a few days because they had done that for the Bible. And the same DAS, run by this Adam Steen guy, then changed the rules to block them from doing so. The new rules basically said, if any group wants to get a permit to use this public space, you're only allowed to use it one day a year, which basically meant if the Satanists wanted to do a reading inside the Capitol complex, they would not be allowed to do anything over the holidays. And he, like I said, you were limited to one day. And when he passed that rule, there was actually a 3-day event scheduled in the Capitol to help homeless veterans, and they had to cancel their event because the new rules blocked the homeless veteran charity from helping people. Like, Iowa's Republican officials are so awful, like as humans, that in order to stick it to Satanists so non-Christians could not have their voice heard in the Capitol building, they were like, screw the homeless veterans. What do they need? So in short, Iowa Republicans have tried over and over to block Satanists from using their public space. They use flimsy excuses, and they don't care who they hurt along the way. I don't think the Satanic Temple has asked for anything unusual. This is just religious discrimination under the guise of respecting the rules. And as far as I can tell, no Christian organization in the state of Iowa has come out in defense of the Satanists, and I would like to know why that is too. Where are all the religious organizations in the state saying, hey, this doesn't concern us, but the discrimination is not okay, and we respect religious plurality, at least when it comes to the government? I don't know why there are no courageous pastors willing to say that. I did ask the Satanists what they were planning to do, and earlier this week, the Iowa representative told me we are considering our options. I don't know if that means a lawsuit or something else. And I think last I heard, they were trying to hold their event maybe at a different venue. And I don't know if that's been resolved yet, but that's where we're at with this. I mean, if you're in Iowa, you're living in Iowa, reach out to your elected officials and raise hell about this, because it's not okay. It's a silly story, but it's very serious in its consequences because they're just doing religious discrimination right in front of our faces. And people should be mad about that. Okay, I'm going to stop there for now. What other questions we got here? The celebration sounds like fun. I've always wanted to celebrate Saturnalia. You still can. Do it at your home. Take pictures, share it with all of us. It seems like Christians are working hard to protect children from participating in reality. Yeah, that's also the motto of Sunday school and every sermon that's ever been delivered. I think the Satanic Temple should sue. Well, that's the question. Do they have grounds for a lawsuit, or is the reason Kim Reynolds and Adam Steen, the reason they're being so coy about why they are saying no to the Satanists, is it's so vague that it's hard to pinpoint actual religious discrimination? That might be the issue. I mean, the Satanic Temple can sue. They have done it in the past. So if they feel like they have a case, I'm sure they will. But I also think they just want to do their thing, and they're not trying to get bogged down in lawsuits. They just want to have a nice time. And so if they can just find another space to hold their event in the public realm, because that's kind of the point, they'll just go ahead and do that too. We'll see. These Satanist people sound like pretty cool cats. How can the Bible thumpers argue with them? They are kinder and more Jesus-like than thumpers themselves. That's what I'm saying. I mean, even if you're a Christian, I think if you're a sensible person, you should say, look, the government should not be taking sides in this. So I support their right to host their events, just like I would hope they support my right to host my events. Um, and you're right. I mean, the whole point of the Satanic Temple to me, anyway, is to show, like, yeah, just because you don't believe in Jesus or their God, there's nothing stopping you from being compassionate or whatever. I will take issue, Catwoman, with one thing you wrote here, which is they are kinder and more Jesus-like. I do not like when people say this group is more Jesus-like than the Christians. Um, let's not try to elevate Jesus as the epitome of kindness and decency, because we don't have to do that. There are plenty of reasons that Jesus himself is not a perfect dude in the Bible. He's temperamental. He's not a family guy in the Bible. You know what I mean? So we don't have to say that. I would set up a reading of the Bible, but then would only be about the disgusting and sexual excerpts. That's what you should do. You should get a permit to read the Bible in the state capitol, and then just get your megaphone and read very select passages while the families are walking through, and let Kim Reynolds and her people try to stop you, because then the headline would be Kim Reynolds is trying to stop people from reading the Bible in the Capitol building. Sounds like at least worth a shot. All right. Like and subscribe there. Let me pull up this next thing here. Got a couple more stories for you here. Oh, this one is insane. Okay. There is a Christian college. It's a private Christian school in California called Olivet University. Not to be confused with, I think there's the University of Olivet somewhere else, and Olivet Nazarene University in other places. It's not that. This is Olivet University in Riverside, California. And it's a small school. I think it only has about like 300 students at the entire campus. And they actually attract a lot of students from East Asia specifically. um, China, India, Korea, places like that. Well, they just got shut down by the state for reasons that I'm going to explain to you that are wild. And the school is acting like it's persecution and they're vowing to fight back. But imagine how many things have to go wrong for a state official to step in and say, you've crossed way too many lines here. Has nothing to do with your faith. You've just broken all the rules and we're going to shut you down. It is bad. I'm going to give you a few reasons this college has problems. Okay. First of all, let's consider the surveillance system and the alleged slave labor. That's just the beginning. Okay. There was a lawsuit filed earlier this year. I'm going to show you this right here. This is from the LA Times, but this was a federal lawsuit filed earlier this year by 4 students, including the one who made the emergency call, who said they were forced to work at least 40 hours a week doing tasks that included manual labor and gardening. And their only outing was a weekly shopping trip to a grocery store chaperoned by school employees. Any other plans to leave the campus required written permission. So these are grown-ass human adults saying we're not allowed to leave campus, which, by the way, if you look on a map, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. You have to drive, I think, like 10, 15 miles to reach civilization, basically. So if they even want to go shopping or to the grocery store, they can't leave campus without another adult chaperoning them. Weird. And they were working not just like doing a campus job, which happens everywhere, but like manual labor and gardening. And they either did not get paid for this or they got paid very little for this, they also said in their lawsuit. So, yikes, that seems disturbing. I will tell you, Olivet denied all of this, and that lawsuit, as far as I can tell, is still ongoing. Also in the lawsuit, there was a student who said she was forced by the school to sell products on Amazon on behalf of the school, and she wasn't paid either. And when she raised concerns to administrators, they told her she had been brainwashed. That's the word she was told by the school officials, because she wasn't doing their bidding, because she was brainwashed on the other side, I guess. So that's a problem. Then here's another issue. There was, and this is actually why the school's getting shut down, because anyone can file a federal lawsuit against anybody. The school has not been found guilty. That case is still ongoing. That's not why they were shut down. The main reason they were shut down had to do with their complete lack of academic rigor or academic anything. Okay. Here's what happened. The California Department of Consumer Affairs, a state office, within that organization, there is an agency called the Bureau of Private and Post-Secondary Education. Their job is to basically make sure the colleges in the state are doing what they're supposed to do, even if they're private schools. Well, apparently, that agents in that agency, they made visits to the campus unannounced just to make sure they were, a real college. And what they found is that there's like no teaching going on here. They said when we walked into classrooms, there were very few students or professors in these campuses. And this is wild. Look at what these agents wrote. Most classes that were observed, officers said, were attended by a handful of students, sometimes 5 or 7, and taught via a live stream. Like the professor was like, I'm out. I'll teach you from a distance. You don't need me there. Administrative representatives at this campus did not have documents available related to student and faculty rosters. They didn't even have that stuff on file, like who's on campus. They didn't have class syllabi on file. Some documents lack details such as how many hours quantified full-time work for a student, and several faculty contracts were either missing or expired. Like the basic paperwork you need at a college. Like, yeah, these are the professors we have. Here are their credentials. Here's the list of the students we have on campus. They just didn't have that stuff. And then when these officers went to the campus to like sit in on a lecture and just see what's going on, they're like, this isn't a lecture. There's only like a few kids here and they're all watching a live stream, which why are you on campus then if you're doing a live stream? That is messed up. One agent also said she walked to a graduate level class, but they were not doing grad level work. Like they were doing babyish type of work. And Olivet denied all of that too. And they said the agency's playing gotcha with these unannounced visits, even though unannounced visits are what they do to all colleges. And Olivet said the agency was prejudiced against them. I actually looked at the complaint, the 31-page complaint made by the agency. There was one part that is wild, and it has to do with these unannounced visits. Look at this. They visited the campus November 15th, 2022. And let's read this with me here. This is amazing. Upon arrival, Bureau staff could not enter the campus location as the campus was secured by a security gate. Bureau staff attempted to contact the number for the campus via the security guard office. Call was not answered. The agent called 4 telephone numbers provided by the school to the Bureau, and we were unable to contact an answering service. No one would pick up their calls at the campus. The answer, okay, I'm going to scroll down here for a second. Bureau staff, look at this. Oh my God. Bureau staff were able to gain access to the campus by following a car who accessed the gate. Oh my God, the only reason they got into the building, they got access to the campus, is by tailing a car that made their way in there. Which, by the way, if you are tailing a car that made their way in there, what the hell is your security like? That's not James Bond spy level mastery here. That's just like, oh, the gate's open. We're just going to drive right in with our van. What is going on at this school? Okay, I just found that hilarious. So that's another thing. Like I said, these agents could not access student files. They couldn't get copies of syllabi. They also said several professors had illegitimate paperwork for their degrees. Yikes. Here's another thing that is problematic. This is not why the school is shutting down or told to shut down, but this is another problem with Olivet University. Like a lot of schools, Olivet has campuses across the country, and one of their campuses was in the state of New York. And at that campus, the campus that was in New York was actually shut down in 2022. Here's the headline at the time. It was shut down in 2022. Why? Financial mismanagement that included criminal activity. And by the way, several administrators at the school pleaded guilty to money laundering and lying about business records. And what the agents found is that in the New York Olivet University buildings, there was tons of asbestos everywhere in the buildings. Like, they bought those buildings and they never renovated them. And this cancer causing material was just in the walls and they never fixed it. And the school had to pay a fine of over, I think, $575,000 in New York. This isn't why the California school had to shut down, but it just shows you who's running this place. Oh my God, this is messed up. I'll give you another thing they had a problem with. This place also has a beef with Newsweek magazine, which doesn't even exist in print anymore, but they have a beef with Newsweek. I'm going to show you a section from Religion News Service article about all this, because this is wild. The school blames its current woes on a long-running feud with the current owners of Newsweek magazine, who have also had ties to the leader of the campus in the past. Through a lawsuit, though a lawsuit over the management of the magazine was settled in 2023, a spokesperson for Olivet has accused Newsweek's owners of colluding with California's government to harm the college. And look at this at the bottom here. Since 2022, Newsweek has published more than 20 maliciously negative reports targeting Olivet University due to ownership disputes, even collaborating via email with the government to attack and manipulate the school. Here's what that actually means. Some writers in Newsweek published a whole bunch of stories about all the shenanigans happening on campus. And at times, they reached out to government officials saying, what's like doing basic journalism? Have you investigated this school? What's going on? What did you find? So they could include that in their stories. And Olivet's like, they're colluding with the government to target us. Like, it's just another right-wing organization going after journalists for doing their job, right? Here's another problem with the same school. Consider the idea of accreditation. Schools need to be accredited. If you went to a real, legitimate college, they were accredited by some outside group that basically says, yes, the degrees you are getting here are valuable because we looked at your curriculum. We looked at the professors who teach you. We investigated the campus environment, and we can vouch for the fact that the diploma you are getting here, you had to do a certain level of work to achieve it, and it's therefore worth something. Like, if you go to an unaccredited school, you might get a diploma, but it's as good as toilet paper. Well, some private Christian schools don't want to be accredited or can't get accredited because their standards are lower by a secular third-party outlet. So they have Christian accreditation companies. And the biggest one that does this is called the Association for Biblical Higher Education, the ABHE. So Olivet was accredited through the ABHE, but even that hasn't worked out for them. In fact, in 2020, the ABHE put Olivet on probation, and then in 2022, it placed them on warning, saying if you don't fix the shit you're doing, we're going to not give you accreditation. Look at this. This is in 2022, a letter from the ABHE to Olivet University, and it basically says in bold here, we're placing you on warning until February of 2024 because we looked at all the stuff you're doing and it's shady as hell. I'm paraphrasing. But like, even the Christian accreditors were like, dude, what the hell are you people doing at this school? You know it's bad when the Christian accreditation group is like, we can't vouch for you. And that warning obviously expired earlier this year. But okay, here's where I'm going with all this. This school has a lot of problems, some of which are way more serious than others. And instead of ever responding to the complaints, they just have this habit of pretending to be persecuted, ignoring the critics, screwing over their own students, and then doing absolutely nothing of value. And that's why this week, a judge in California This is the name isn't important, but this judge in California basically ordered the school to be shut down by January 10th. And she issued them a fine of like $64,000 for legal fees. But she basically said, you need to close up shop by January 10th. And I want to show you one, it was a 107-page ruling where she documented, here's what the agency found. Here's how you responded. Here's why I'm not buying your responses. But look at number 41. After consideration of all evidence presented and the disciplinary factors listed in the disciplinary guidelines, the only degree of discipline that would ensure public protection is the revocation of the school's approval to operate. I have to shut you down to protect the people. Like, that is legal speak for what the hell is wrong with you people. And so by January 10th, she says the school has to basically shut down. You cannot admit any new students after January 10th. And all your current students, you have to send them to other places. And your job from now until then is to get your current students at a real school where they can get a real education. So unbelievable that a judge had to say this. And what's the school's response to all this? Because you can guess what the school's response is to all this. This is what the school said. Olivet University decides a day after that judge's decision to continue in California under religious exemption. They're going to keep moving forward. The university is currently preparing to appeal the decision through the appropriate legal channels to address the matter thoroughly. Olivet University has made the decision as of December 11th to operate under religious exemption. And what that basically means is they would have a little more autonomy. They would not be subject to oversight from the state, but they would be very limited in what they could offer. Like you can offer a degree in like church leadership because that's not a secular skill, but like you can't offer a degree that, say, a public school might be able to offer. But also this means that students need to know if you get a diploma from this school from this point forward, it is worthless. There is no backing of it by the state. It means absolutely nothing. Now, maybe that won't matter if you're going to go work for a church that doesn't care about your academic history. But if you are going to college to get a diploma that you hope will be useful to you when you go out and do whatever it is you do, it won't be. Your diploma is going to be worthless. And I want to be clear, whatever punishments were levied against this school in the past had nothing to do with its Christian foundation. But they are now using Christianity as a shield to avoid further consequences. So I don't know what's going to happen now. Even if this school continues operating, I don't know why any student would go there unless they are totally unaware of the fact that how shady this school is. And I would be disturbed if any churches wanted to employ these students or any churches want to work with this college or advocate that students go to this college. But I think students have a right to know they're wasting their time and tuition dollars. One other thing I didn't mention is that one of the things this school has done is they lure students to their campus by offering them scholarship money. But what they don't realize is that scholarship money is contingent on these students doing manual labor on campus and not getting paid for it, whatever rates they should be paid for it. And at that point, students are kind of stuck because you can imagine if they're coming from another country, especially on a student visa, and they're like, well, I have to get my education here, otherwise I have to go back. Then they are now stuck doing whatever manual labor the school wants them to do. And they're stuck on campus because they're not allowed to leave campus because they will be surveilled. Like, that's the sort of cultish trap that these students are in. I do feel bad for them. I think a lot of students might attend a school like this not realizing how bad it actually is. And if everyone in your bubble, in your Christian bubble, is telling you you should go to a Christian school for college, I could see why students might go here. But everyone who's telling them to do that is committing an injustice. And the state of California is trying to help these students out by getting them transferred somewhere else, doing all this stuff. But it's the church and the leadership that is working against the state. in order to screw over the students. So very, very disturbing. All right, I'm going to pause there for a bit and take some questions. What kind of college is this? Private Christian school. I don't think it's denominational, though it does work with I want to make sure this works with a Korean American pastor named David Zhang. And I'm not sure what specific brand of Christianity he's promoting. But it's a private Christian school. There are lots of them out there. I wonder how expensive their tuition is. I tried to answer this with the fact that they do give out a lot of scholarships, but there are lots of strings attached. I don't know how many students they accept for full tuition or what that tuition is. I'm sure that information is on their website, though. Wow, colleges like that really trivialize credentials and should be shut down to uphold academic integrity. And that's the thing. If they want, like Liberty University, I'm going to talk about them in a little bit. They get a lot of federal student loan dollars. And in exchange, they have to do some bare minimum of transparency. And they have a certain bar they have to meet in order to keep receiving funds. And so if a school wants to say, to hell with that, we're just going to form our own pretend college, which will be a pipeline for employees for churches. We're going to train pastors for the future. That's fine, I guess, if you're a student and you know you want to become a pastor. The thing about college is a lot of students go before they're ready to know what they want to do with their career. This happens all the time at secular colleges. Students change majors. They go into college thinking they want to learn one thing. They find a new passion when they are there. They want to do something else later on. But if you go to a school like this, you have to get a job within the church community because you won't have any sort of degree worth anything if you try to go outside the church world. So that's what's disturbing about it. Makes me wonder if Grand Canyon University falls into the same category. Kind of, yes, and I'm going to talk about them in a second for a very different reason. Is there a seminary there at Olivet? You know what? I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm not going to answer it because I don't know the answer. Where they were accused of human trafficking too, right? You know what? I was looking up this school. There were so many problems with this school. I don't remember if human trafficking was one of them. If you told me they were, I guess I wouldn't be surprised, but that wasn't. I was specifically trying to look up what they were getting in trouble for, and that wasn't the reason they're getting shut down. So the federal lawsuit against them that I mentioned at the beginning is a whole different issue, but I don't know if specifically human trafficking was one of their issues. I'll bet this is going to be turned into a case of Christian persecution. They're already doing that, right? That's their press release already, saying they're coming after us because of who we are. And that's what they've been doing every time people call them out on this stuff. All right. Sign up for the newsletter. I got a couple more stories for you, and then I'll be done. Okay. Let me pull this up here. All right, here we go. I read a report from a right-wing Christian, a right-wing organization, and it was so deceptive in what they said. And I'm going to show you the report and why it's deceptive. But in order to make sense of it, I need to tell you two semi-short backstories, okay? First, let me talk about Liberty University. That's the Jerry Falwell founded school, Jerry Falwell Jr. It's been in the news for all the wrong reasons all the time, right? So in March, the Department of Education fined Liberty University $14 million. Here's the press release from the Department of Education. And they said, we're announcing our Office of Federal Student Aid is imposing a $14 million fine as a result of a settlement agreement with Liberty University. So the reason Liberty University got this fine is for violating something called the Clery Act, C-L-E-R-Y. And what that basically says is the government was saying Liberty created a culture where students were afraid to report sexual violence, and the school didn't do nearly enough to let students know about threats on campus. And the reason the government can levy a fine against a private Christian school like Liberty is because Liberty gets hundreds of millions of dollars every year in student loan payments. Okay, in 2022-2023, that school year, they got $880 million from the government in student loans. And that money helped about 67% of their students. So Liberty University needs the government to give them money. And what the government asks for in return are, like I said earlier, like some basic, totally standard things like, well, you need to make sure students are protected on campus. You got to take assault seriously, and this is the way you report these things to us. Has nothing to do with religion. It is not you got to pick one or the other. It just says, okay, if you want money from us, students need to be safe on campus. Here's how you report it. And the reason Liberty got the fine is because they weren't doing it. Okay. Specifically, I'll tell you, Liberty said, okay, we will pay the $14 million fine. In fact, we're going to spend another $2 million over the next 2 years to fix all these problems. So good, they should have. But the reason they were levied $14 million in fines is because the Department of Education detailed all the problems that existed on Liberty between 2016 and 2022. And based on what the government found, they could have levied a fine of $37.5 million. And in the Washington Post, they did a whole article about what Liberty did wrong. And check out this. This is the single most blistering Clary report I have ever read, ever, said a safety consultant who reviewed a copy of the report. Earlier in his career, this dude filed Clary Act complaints against multiple universities, including Liberty, as a victim's advocate. And he said, I cannot think of a single other comparable case in the entire 32-year history of the Clary Act. So, oh my God, whatever Liberty University was doing was horrific. Okay. And the reason without getting into all the specifics, because it would take forever, basically, Liberty was looking the other way when it came to sexual assault allegations. Women on campus knew that if you tell a Liberty official, I was sexually assaulted, they're going to say, why were you in a room alone with another man who wasn't your husband? What were you wearing? Oh, were you at a party after curfew? Were you drunk? Because that means you violated our rules about alcohol. Like, all these women on campus knew that if you report sexual assault, it might put you in danger because you probably broke one of the school's silly Christian rules. And so they decided it was better off not to report sexual assault on campus. So that was a problem. I read one article about abuse on these Christian campuses that even asked this question: how do you report sexual assault at a place where authorities seem skeptical that such a thing even exists? Because these schools make it sound like the Christian men can do nothing wrong. And if women come forward with sexual assault allegations, it must be because they're slutty sluts who deserve to be shamed. Okay, so that's story number one. That's why Liberty University was punished earlier this year. I'll give you a second story. It involves another Christian school called Grand Canyon University. And guess what happened about a year ago? This is a press release from the Department of Education, yet again. And it says the U.S. Department of Education Office of Federal Student Aid today announced a $37.7 million fine against Grand Canyon University. So this has nothing to do with sexual assault or anything, but the federal government, for the same reason it's allowed to go after Liberty University, because it takes government money, they went after Grand Canyon University, which is a private Christian school, because, and I've talked about this in another video, there was a ton of evidence that said Grand Canyon University lied about tuition fees to reel students in, and then once they were enrolled in their programs, the tuition value would keep going up and up and up. And now these students can't leave because they're already taking classes. They're already in the system. And so it's really hard to leave. And you can't lie to students about what your education is going to cost, right? So the government explained in great detail how GCU lied about tuition on its website, its enrollment agreement, the calculator it had on its website so students could figure out how much they would have to pay, and other marketing materials. Like, this wasn't some accident on GCU's part. They were lying. It was purposeful. They wanted to attract students with a low-ball tuition before gouging them later. Okay? So the government, my point is, the government had very good reasons for punishing these two Christian schools. What the schools did was appalling for very different reasons, but like, those schools did it. No one's suggesting these schools didn't do the things they were accused of doing. I will say GCU, however, has said we totally didn't lie to students, and they're appealing the $37.7 million fine. Okay, but there's your backstory. So with that all in mind, this week I found out that this right-wing Christian group had put out this report. It's a 22-page report from a right-wing group called the American Principles Project. And look at the headline on page 1. The Department of Education's Office of Enforcement, the obscure agency leading a crusade against Christian colleges, and how new data proves the bias, by John Schwepp. Okay, so you think the government's waging a crusade against Christian colleges and that you can prove it. Interesting. I looked at the data. Spoiler, they didn't prove anything. But here's what their press release noted. This is what John Schwepp, the guy who wrote that report, said. As our report details, the Biden-Harris Department of Education has been engaged in a long-running scheme to punish Christian colleges that are ideologically opposed to the left's agenda. The unfair targeting of these institutions has been egregious, and it needs to stop immediately. Okay, and it goes on to say Trump deprioritized the enforcement office and his next administration should eliminate it, and we hope to work with them to get rid of it. Okay, this idea that the Biden-Harris administration was out to get Christian schools is wild. But my favorite thing about this whole report, the biggest thing about this whole report, is this part I'm going to show you right here. Check this out on the top paragraph of their press release. Drawing on newly obtained data, the report found that nearly 70% of the department's enforcement actions have involved faith-based and career schools, despite those schools representing less than 10% of students nationwide. Let's think about this for a second. Christian colleges represent fewer than 10% of students nationwide, but they get the majority of the punishments. They're so close to getting it. Like, has it occurred to you that maybe that tiny fraction of shady-ass Christian schools might be committing a disproportionate amount of the crimes? And maybe public universities actually hire people to make sure they're being compliant with the law. And that even when public schools make mistakes, and believe me, they do, those mistakes are not nearly on the same level as the ones we're seeing at Christian schools. That's what's unbelievable. Let me show you one other thing on this press release. Look at how they describe Liberty and Grand Canyon University, which I just told you about. The department's Office of Enforcement also targeted two of the nation's most prominent Christian universities, Grand Canyon University and Liberty University, which resulted in record-level fines worth more than all penalties imposed over the past 7 years combined. Yeah, because those two schools committed the biggest crimes. They broke the rules the most. At least 12 Christian colleges have been the target of excessive penalties or banned from receiving federal student aid. By comparison, no Ivy League school has been the recipient of punitive action by the Office of Enforcement. Yeah, dog, maybe that's because the Ivy League schools take this stuff somewhat seriously. The average fine against a Christian school for a Clery Act violation was $815,000, compared to $228,571 against public and private institutions. Again, Clery Act has to do with like keeping students safe on campus, and that includes sexual violence. You know who doesn't care about sexual violence? Conservative Christians who are known for purity culture and victim blaming and shaming women. Like, yeah, they don't care. So those schools are more likely to put students in danger. So yeah, their fines are going to be bigger. That's not because the government's targeting Christian schools. It's because Christian schools are more likely to commit these crimes. Like, this is not hard to understand. At no point, I read this 22-page report because it's short. At no point in the report did the American Principles Project explain to readers why Liberty and GCU got those fines. I just told you that at the beginning of this video. They did not explain any of that in the report, nor did they explain why other schools, like Ivy League schools, should have been fined more or at all. They didn't say like Yale should have been fined this much because of these things. They didn't do that. So what the hell are we even doing here? Those Christian schools were punished because their crimes were bigger and they affected more students. And I'll give you one of the things they pointed out. I think they pointed this out in the article, is that Clery Act fine that Liberty University received, that $14 million fine, the reason that made so many headlines is because before that, the biggest Clery Act fine against a school went against Michigan State for $4.5 million because of Larry Nassar, the guy who sexually abused all those gymnasts. And obviously, that is appalling. And if anyone at the school tried to cover up that stuff, that's appalling. But the reason that fine was lower than what Liberty got is because it involved a certain group of students. Whereas Liberty University, by ignoring sexual assault and not giving students a safe pathway to report abuse and not warning students when there might be a predator on campus, that stuff affects the entire student body, more people, which is why they had a bigger fine. You get what I'm saying? So this idea that Christian schools are getting punished more so than other schools, yeah, it's because they were affecting more students with what they were doing. Okay, I'm going to show you something else here. Like, the government, I think, can and should go after every school, by the way, that does what these Christian schools did. And that is the sort of oversight we should have of any school that is getting taxpayer dollars. But the Biden administration was not weaponizing the Department of Education's Office of Enforcement. This had nothing to do with ideology. The government gives nearly $1 billion to Liberty University. You think Democratic administrations like what Liberty University teaches? No, but this isn't an ideological thing. They offer student loans. And if you want to use it at a private school, you're allowed to do that. So this idea that it's ideological is ridiculous. Let me show you something else in this report. This is, I'll show you this in the report. Just a random page. What is the Office of Enforcement? Okay. Let me scroll down right here. Let's read this paragraph together. Corinthian Colleges, once the largest career education institution in the country, serving some 110,000 students and operating 105 campuses nationwide, was fined $30 million in 2015 under Obama by the Department of Education for allegedly failing to provide clear and accurate information to prospective students. The department also barred Corinthian colleges from receiving federal student aid. Later that year, Corinthian filed bankruptcy, affecting nearly 16,000 students. Think about what this means. They are saying, look, we have this huge Christian institution, Corinthian Colleges. They helped so many students, but the government under Obama, the Democrat, they fined them, and then they prevented students from getting student loans that they could use at Corinthian, and then Corinthian had to shut down, and 16,000 students could no longer go there. Makes it sound like persecution, right? You know what Corinthian colleges actually did? Because they don't tell you that in this report. So let me tell you what Corinthian colleges did. Corinthian colleges flat out lied to students about job placement rates. In fact, according to the LA Times, what they did is they actually paid temporary employment agencies to hire graduates in short-term jobs so they could say, hey, look, someone got a degree from our institution and now they're working. So see, get a diploma from us and you can get a real job. The LA Times pointed out in 2015 that the school took an accounting graduate. She got a major in accounting. And they said, look, this is an example of someone who's employed in her field because she worked at Taco Bell since 2006 to make some money. That is not employed in the field of accounting. She just had a part-time job. And they said, see, her degree is useful. They also said these people graduated with business degrees and they're employed in their fields when in fact they actually worked retail jobs at Safeway and Macy's. Like, again, they're lying to students about the value of a diploma from their school. And what the government said in 2015 is that instead of providing clear and accurate information to help students choose which college to attend, Corinthian violated students' and taxpayers' trust. And that showed a blatant disregard, not just for professional standards, but for students' futures. That's why the government said, students who if you want to take out student loans, you can't use it at Corinthian colleges because you're wasting your money. And our job as the government is to make sure you're getting bang for your buck. So you can't use it at Corinthians because they're lying to you and your diploma is useless. But if you want to use it at a different Christian school, that's fine. You can do that. The report that the APP put out didn't mention any of that stuff. So this is my point. They just treat it as a case of religious persecution because the Obama administration demanded documents from the school if they wanted to fight back. And the fact that the school shut down is treated as a problem for 16,000 students, but not the fact that the school was lying to all of those students about why they should enroll there in the first place. Corinthian colleges went bankrupt because the people running that school, they were all liars. It was their fault. But the APP says in its report that the shutdown upended countless students' college plans. Like it's Obama's fault and not the Christian leaders who lied to the students to make the school look better than it actually was. I did a story earlier tonight about Bill Donahue and the Catholic League. And Bill Donahue routinely whines about how the media highlights predatory Catholic priests when there are also plenty of public school teachers who break the law. And he creates this false equivalency because there are more public school teachers than there are Catholic priests. So how come the media only focuses on the Catholic priests? But first of all, there is no rule that says arrests have to be proportional to like the religious demographics of the nation. Also, the Catholic Church, they pretend they are morally above, morally superior to everybody else. And of course, the nature of the crimes is that the Catholic Church has protected predators, while public schools have a system in place, even if it's imperfect, to punish anyone who is accused of predation. You know what I mean? And this is the thing about the APP report. They never defend what these Christian schools are doing. They just never mention them in the first place. They never tell their readers why the schools lied to students, how they put them in harm's way. They never try to justify all the horrible things these Christian schools did. They just make it sound like it's religious persecution by the government. In fact, let me show you what the school says about Liberty University specifically, which I told you they downplayed the threat of sexual abuse. Here's what the report says about Liberty University. The Department of Education's investigation against Liberty University covered more than 7 years of records, by far the most extensive review process of any higher education institution in the department's history. A Liberty University statement also notes many of the department's methodologies, findings, and calculations in the report were drastically different from their historic treatment of other universities. Okay, but what about the fact that you downplayed sexual assault, made it harder for students to report sexual assault, and didn't tell students if there were predators on campus? There's no mention of that anywhere here. Like, what the hell? Here's what it says about what Liberty did wrong, I think. Where did it go? Sorry, I can't. Oh, here we go. This is the part I wanted to show you. Look above me. It is impossible to reconcile the allegations against Liberty University with the punishment assessed by the Department of Education. School officials acknowledged reporting errors, including incorrect statistical reports and timely warnings and emergency notifications that were not sent. They said they're sorry. While not insignificant, the mistakes do not justify the record fine. You know what warnings were not sent out? Hey, there's a alleged rapist on campus. Like, they didn't tell students that one. They were pressuring students not to report sexual assault. What the hell sort of whitewashing is going on here? The mistakes were shocking. They downplayed threats that made it more likely that more students on campus would be victims of sexual violence. So yeah, the fine was beyond justified. And by the way, if public schools commit similar violations, they should also be held accountable. This is not complicated. Just because some taxpayer-funded schools happen to be religious doesn't mean they should be granted immunity from their own violations. But instead of saying any of that, this is what the report shows people. This is an example of a chart in the report. Look at the fines levied by the Office of Enforcement since 2021. Religious schools got the majority of fines, while all other schools got less. Yeah, it's because the religious schools do more of the criming. Like, why is this hard for them to understand? This pie chart doesn't show the thing you think it shows. These people are so bad at math, or they're really good at math and they know their members are dumb. It's one or the other. I don't know which one makes me feel better. Like, the government's not out to get religious schools. This should just confirm your hunch that religious schools routinely think they're above the law, so they don't take the necessary steps to follow the rules. I swear. Okay, one more thing, and then I swear I'm done with this. This is another page in their report. Look at what it says down here. They are like, look at how the government has issued all these fines against Christian schools. Look at these last 3 bullet points here. Samford University was fined $76,000 for violations of the Clery Act, but they're one of the top schools for career preparation. The Baptist Bible College was fined $35,000 in 2022. They forgot the dollar sign because they didn't proofread this, for violations of the Clery Act. That was significantly larger than bigger universities. Bethesda University, a school with only 264 undergraduates, was fined $37,000. Okay, what did they do? Why were they fined these amounts? I looked through the report. They never explain what they did. I will tell you, I will link to a post that I wrote about this in the show notes in the description for this YouTube video. I saw what the Department of Education submitted, the paperwork of the justification for those fines. And all I need to say is the government justified why they did these fines of this amount to those schools. It's there if you want, or if you're willing to look for it. You won't find it in this report because this report is designed to manipulate Christians. APP keeps doing this. They just argue it's unfair for smaller Christian schools to be fined. They never explain what those schools did or how the government justified those fines, even though those justifications are available. And here's why they did this. The whole thing is an effort to get right-wing media outlets to package their lie for their really dumb, gullible viewers and listeners and readers. And the whole point is to tell them the government is scrutinizing and harassing Christian schools. You know how I know that's their tactic? Because this is also in the report. Look, the government scrutinized and harassed tactics. And it worked because guess who did cover this story? You'll never believe it. Fox News did a whole story about this. New report shows nearly 70% of Biden administration's education enforcement targeted Christian and career colleges. Christian colleges, GCU and Liberty, have been subjected to sharp scrutiny. Yeah, and the whole article just goes on to restate the press release and offer nothing of value. So, like, the APP got exactly what it wanted. It wanted coverage. It wanted to pretend there was persecution, and they got the worst propaganda outlet in the country to fall for it and amplify their lies, because that's how these people worked. Okay, I'll stop there. What questions do we have here? I got one more story after this, but can you tell this one made me mad? I was so mad about that story. Wow, when Trump dissolves the Department of Education, how will Liberty Youth survive without those loans? Yeah, listen, if the Department of Education is removed, it's all the things that the Department of Education does will not automatically disappear, but they will be siphoned off to other parts of the government. They'll still Liberty U's not getting student loans. They are dependent on the federal government to finance what they are doing. So even if Trump got his way, I don't think this will happen. I think it's just something they like telling the MAGA cultists. They're going to get rid of the Department of Education. Well, guess what? It's really hard to pull that one off. But even if they did it, Liberty U is still going to get its money because it needs the money to function. I know as a fact that GCU specifically targets veterans and excessively drains their VA benefits, and their credentials are pretty substandard. I have no reason to doubt this, but all the more reason that if they're using taxpayer dollars and getting VA benefits and things like that, there should be some level of oversight that has nothing to do with the Christianity stuff. It's just, do you keep students safe on campus? Are you making sure students actually get an education that you were promising to give them? I don't think that's asking a lot. Most of the Christian schools are being punished. Stop breaking the law. That's pretty much how they operate. Like, yeah, if you don't want to get fined by the government, then you already signed the paperwork saying, if we take money from the government, we're going to provide this paperwork. Provide the paperwork. Do the things you say you're going to do. Don't break the contract. It's not complicated. Like, show me a school that did everything it said it was going to do, and then the government went after them. That would be persecution. I would defend the Christian schools in that case, but that hasn't happened yet. Impact to the population is fair to consider in sentencing. That's right. I mean, horrible things can happen at public institutions that affect a handful of students, maybe a big handful of students. But if you are like letting predators on your campus, if you are saying we're not going to take sexual assault seriously, that now impacts your entire campus. And of the people who actually attend in person, they're all affected by that. So yes, that should be considered. And that's why these schools got a big fine. How did these compare to Trump U? They actually pretend to give you an education. The diplomas could be worth something at GCU and Liberty if you actually went through the motions and did it. Like, those schools are accredited. Those schools, you can graduate from there and have a legit degree in certain things, I would imagine, whereas Trump U is just fraudulent. It's like the Barry Weiss fake school in Texas for all the right-wing people who just like say debate me 100 times a day. Like, it's not a real school. You don't get a diploma here. But if it makes you feel better, okay. I'm sure it qualifies you for a job at some right-wing propaganda outlet where they don't care about your credentials. But if you actually want to get a real job, you're not going to get it with this diploma from these schools. That leads to a very important question. Why is the government funding religious education? It goes against church and state. They're getting subsidized. Here's the thing. The government's not funding Liberty University. They're offering student loans to students who want to get an education. And if they want to use those loans to go to a private Christian school, they are allowed to do that at these schools. So is it funding religious education? I don't know. I feel like this one's been litigated. And if students want to use that money, student loans are secular. How they use it is up to them. And that's between, the students and the government. That's a secular thing. I don't know that it's a church state issue so much. If the government was giving money directly to Liberty University to advance Christianity, that would be an issue, but that's not necessarily what student loans are doing. So, weird issue. All right. I got one last story for you, then I'll call it a night. Let me pull this up really quick. Okay. Here's the last story I want to talk to you about. The Supreme Court just said it's going to hear a case later in early 2025 that has to do with whether religious nonprofits have to pay unemployment taxes. And I realize that sounds extremely boring, but the story behind how this case got to the Supreme Court's kind of wild. And I think it's worth talking about this because the consequences here could be enormous depending on what the Supreme Court does. Okay, so here's what happened. Earlier this year, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and if you know anything about the Wisconsin Supreme Court, is that recently, like last year, 2 years ago, it is a 4-3 liberal majority. Like there was a big Supreme Court election. A woman was running for that seat. She had the support of progressives. She won. It flipped the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They got rid of gerrymandering in the state. Well, this 4-3 liberal Supreme Court in Wisconsin, they ruled on an issue earlier this year. It was a 4-3 vote. And let me tell you about that case. It involved something called the Wisconsin Unemployment Compensation Act. And what that is it says all employers in the state of Wisconsin have to give money to the government to help pay eligible citizens temporary benefits when they're out of work. Like basically all employers have to chip into the unemployment tax system to help people who are out of work. Now in 1972, religious nonprofits were declared exempt from that law. Specifically, the law said that if you're a nonprofit, even if you employ people, but you're a church or a ministry and you operate primarily for religious purposes, you do not have to pay into the system. I'm not saying I like that law, but that is what they passed in 1972. So last year, a lower court in Wisconsin said a group called the Catholic Charities Bureau, along with 4 of its groups that it's oversees, the Catholic Charities Bureau, it said, is not eligible for the exemption. And like everyone knew that the Catholic Charities Bureau, the CCB, it is overseen by a Catholic diocese. But the question that everyone was wondering is the charity work that they do, is it actually religious in nature? Are they promoting their religion with the work they do? I'll give you an example. Some of these groups that were working under the CCB, the Catholic group, they helped people with job placement. They helped give food to the hungry. They helped people with developmental disabilities. And all of those things are really important. I'm so glad there are groups doing that sort of work. And the CCB said, our desire to help poor people and disadvantaged people, that is just an extension of our faith. That's fine. That's great. Like, I wish more religious people were like that. You know what I mean? But here's the question. If you are helping the poor and you're helping people who are disadvantaged, is that religious? Because all the services they were providing were secular in nature. And just because like the top of their organizational chart has the Catholic Church at the top, doesn't mean they are working to advance Catholicism. And if they're not actively and directly promoting Catholicism, why should they get a tax exemption that's supposed to benefit religious organizations? You know what I mean? So for decades, the CCB was right along with us on this. They paid the unemployment taxes because they said our work is charitable, educational, and rehabilitative. It's not religious. They're the ones that said that. But in 2015, for whatever reason, they said, hey, we're going to apply for that tax exemption. We're religious now. We're going to go for it. Maybe, the Catholic Church has shifted to the right in many ways. They decided to go for it. And guess what? They got rejected because the courts basically said, you're not promoting religion. You're helping the poor. That's great. But you're not promoting religion. You don't get a tax exemption. So over the next several years, that decision got reversed. Then it got reversed again. This happened over and over in the courts. And so finally, this case gets in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And when they looked at this case, they arrived at the same conclusion. And I want to show you what they said. This is from their ruling. Right here. The Court of Appeals concluded that for an employee's services to be exempt from unemployment tax, the organization must not only have a religious motivation, but the services provided, its activities, must also be primarily religious in nature. That's what the law says. You are not promoting religion, so you don't get the exemption. That's what the Wisconsin Supreme Court said. They said you can't just look at the top of the pyramid and see the Catholic Church. You can't just say you're religious when the work you're doing is not. We have to look at your activities, not your reasons for why you do this stuff, but what you are actually doing. So, in other words, we don't care if you call yourself Catholic, because literally any organization can just say, oh, yeah, we're totally Catholic. And then they could get out of paying the taxes. And like, that would be horrible. Like, what mattered is what you do. And when the justices looked at that, they said the tax exemptions were never meant for groups like yours. Okay. Look at what they wrote in the ruling here again. The record demonstrates that CCB and the sub-entities, which are organized as separate corporations apart from the church itself, neither attempt to imbue program participants with the Catholic faith, nor supply any religious materials to program participants or employees. Although not required, those would be strong indications that the activities are primarily religious in nature. Like if you were proselytizing while you are helping people get food or find jobs, okay, that's promoting religion, but you don't do that. So you're not promoting religion. So why do you get a tax exemption? That doesn't make any sense. They went on to say, this is a separate part of the same ruling, CCBs and the sub-entities' activities are primarily charitable and secular. They said that. It is secular work that you are doing. They went on to say here, look at this, a wholly secular endeavor. I don't know if that's a pun, holy, but well played if it is. They also said, look at this, such services can be provided by organizations of either religious or secular motivations. Anyone could do the work you're doing, and the services provided would not differ in any sense. So how come you want a tax exemption when a secular group doing the same thing you do would not get one? That doesn't make any sense, which is true. They said one other thing in this decision. This is number 67. Although CCB and the sub-entities assert a religious motivation behind their work, the law's language indicates that's not enough to get the exemption. An objective examination of the actual activities of CCB and your sub-entities reveals that their activities are secular in nature. We therefore conclude that CCB and the sub-entities are not operated primarily for religious purposes, so you don't get your tax exemption. So, huge decision. The correct decision. And like, look, there might have been a different outcome if the Catholic Church was literally running these groups, but that's not what happened. The church is just overseeing it from a distance at arm's length. So from here on out, at least in Wisconsin, charities have to do a lot more than just point to a cross somewhere to prove they deserve a faith-based exemption under the law. They have to say, look, we are a religious organization. Here's what we do to promote religion. And that's why we deserve out of paying in these unemployment taxes. I mean, it was a big ruling when it happened, in part because it kind of feels courageous these days for any powerful court to state the obvious. Like, just because an organization cites a religious link doesn't make it religious. That's a far cry from the US Supreme Court, which says Hobby Lobby is Christian and it doesn't have to provide, comprehensive health insurance for its employees because its owners like Jesus, right? So like, this was a big deal in Wisconsin. What would have happened if they ruled the other way? That could have been bad. And in fact, when a reporter asked the Freedom from Religion Foundation about this, look at what they said. This is from Patrick Elliott, who's an attorney with FFRF. If the charity groups had prevailed, the next steps would be arguments to exempt religious hospitals and religious colleges such as Marquette University from paying the unemployment tax. Like Marquette University, a religious school, has to pay these taxes because providing an education is not a religious endeavor. Like you're a religious faith-based school, but you're not there to promote religion. But you can imagine if the Supreme Court said the other thing, every one of these religious colleges, religious hospitals would say, we don't want to pay the tax either. The whole system would break down. And Elliot said, it's really a win for employees who work for religious organizations because now they get coverage under the Wisconsin unemployment system. Yes, it's a win-win for everybody involved. Like more companies paying more taxes, assuming they're going to good places, like that's good for everybody, right? And by the way, I want to show you one other thing. If you need more proof that the Wisconsin Supreme Court made the right decision here, let me show you the first page of the dissent in that ruling. Here you go. This is the dissenting opinion. It begins with the Bible verse. The state of Wisconsin gives a tax exemption to any nonprofit organization operated primarily for religious purposes and operated by a church. Like, if you're starting your dissent saying these are religious organizations and we respect church-state separation in this state, and you're beginning it with a Bible verse, like maybe you're not helping your cause. That same dissenting judge said one paragraph later that the liberal majority is impermissibly entangling the government in church doctrine after citing a Bible verse in her dissent. Crazy. So whatever. So the religious groups that defended the CCB, they were mad and they said, we're totally going to fight you on this all the way up. Where did this go? I want to make sure I could pull this up here. Here we go. The right-wing group Beckett Fund, this is what they told a news outlet. The Wisconsin Supreme Court got this case dead wrong. CCB is religious, whether Wisconsin recognizes that fact or not. Which, just think about that for a second. No one said the CCB isn't religious. What the Supreme Court in Wisconsin justices said is, yeah, fine, but the work they're doing is not promoting religion. I don't know why the lawyer doesn't get that, but I do. Whatever. The firm will appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court because, of course, if they can get this in front of Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, they're feeling pretty good about their chances. It is telling that the way they responded to that case didn't mention any of the facts of the case. But I think a ruling like this in Wisconsin was long overdue because we know there are mega church pastors who don't pay taxes on their mansions because they can just say the homes are owned by their ministries. And they should pay taxes on it because that's not for religious purposes. They found a way to get out of the system, and that's not right. And in Wisconsin, they were not allowed to get out of the system, and that's a good thing. Religious ministries should not be able to get tax exemptions on anything they want, even when they're not promoting religion. Of course, they shouldn't get those exemptions. Serving the poor and helping the needy are not inherently religious just because some people want to pretend they are. So at the end of the day, I want to be clear with the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruling, none of this prevented the Catholic Church from doing a damn thing. If they want to help the needy, they can do it. If they want to feed the poor, feed the hungry, help the poor, help them get jobs. If they believe their faith calls for them to do that, great. Nobody is stopping you. And in fact, by paying those unemployment taxes, by paying into the system, they're actually doing even more good because they are now also helping people dealing with unemployment. Like it's all good all the way around here. So by appealing this to the Supreme Court, the Catholic Church and this conservative Beckett Fund group, they were basically saying, yeah, but part of our religion is also screwing over the unemployed. We don't like them. We don't want them to get access to money. We don't want to pay into the system. Whatever goodwill they may have preserved by focusing on helping the less fortunate would have been wiped out because they're basically saying, screw the poor, screw the people who don't have jobs right now. Not our job to help them. And I bring this all up because guess what happened last Friday? The U.S. Supreme Court said, hey, we're going to listen to 2 new cases next year. And one of them is Catholic Charities Bureau versus the Wisconsin Labor Review Commission. They are going to hear this case. So that's bad news. The Supreme Court gets to choose which cases it takes up. And the fact that 4 justices agreed, we want to hear this one, suggests to me that they want to overturn what the Wisconsin court did. I have to assume that's what they're going to do. And again, if they do that, it is possible that faith-based colleges and hospitals across the country could receive a financial windfall because they no longer have to pay unemployment taxes, at least in states where they're not exempt. I don't know what the court could do here. It's possible they could say, we're just overturning the Wisconsin ruling, so this only applies to Catholic Charities Bureau, or it only applies to religious institutions in Wisconsin, or they could just try to blow a massive hole in the wall between church and state and say, nope, no religious entity has to pay any sort of taxes. I don't know. Like, I'm not a lawyer. Don't ask me what they're going to do. But every time the U.S. Supreme Court gets a chance to destroy church-state separation, they have taken that opportunity. And they keep getting bigger. And that is disturbing. Speaking to CNN, one legal expert put it this way that I wanted to show you. Here we go. This is from Steve Vladeck, who is a Supreme Court expert. Here we go. The fact that the court is agreeing to hear this case at all is perhaps a sign that the court wants to weigh in more generally on the scope of such state law exemptions and how they are applied across the country. Either way, this quickly becomes the most significant religious liberty case to receive full review from the court in the last 2 years. Yeah, it is scary, scary stuff. You can imagine how many charities are going to race to align with a religious group, regardless of what they actually do, for no reason other than we don't want to pay taxes, and Clarence Thomas is about to give us a green light. I will tell you, Wisconsin's Attorney General, his name is Joshua Call, he's a Democrat. This is what he said to the Supreme Court when he was asking them, don't take up this case. He said, Wisconsin's Supreme Court got it right. Courts routinely deny religious tax exemptions to entities that assert religious motivations without overly entangling themselves in religious matters. That effort doesn't violate the church autonomy principle. Basically, courts say yes or no to churches and taxes all the time, or courts make religious groups pay taxes all the time. It doesn't get involved in church doctrine. It doesn't tell the churches what to do. It doesn't make them do anything. And the unemployment tax doesn't violate their argument that this gets in the way of their free exercise rights. It imposes no constitutionally significant burden on the religious work they do. It is a general law that is neutral and non-discriminatory on questions of religious belief. So, hey, Supreme Court, don't take up this case. And the Supreme Court's like, yeah, we don't care. We are totally taking up this case because we can. And now the question is going to be, how much damage will they do using this case as the vehicle? So that decision will come out probably in June of next year, and the oral arguments will happen in the next couple of months. But it's disturbing, and you should keep this case in mind because we don't know how badly they are going to use it. What's the Supreme Court going to do with this case? We don't know. All right, I'm going to stop there. What other questions do you have? And then I think I'm going to call it a night. It sounds like they're trying to have it both ways, though. If they're providing a secular service, that means they're going to ask for federal funding. I don't know if CCB gets federal funding for any of this stuff, but they should have to pay whatever general taxes any organization in the state has to pay. And they get access to that too. Their employees are also eligible for those employment funds if they are in that position. So you're screwing over your employees as well as other people who are in need of help by trying to overturn the Wisconsin Supreme Court's ruling. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I get why they're doing it, but it shouldn't make sense. If the SCOTUS does that, who wants to bet the Satanic Church will be jumping in with adding religion to everything that should be getting taxed to get them to reverse? Well, and this is the fear. Depending on how far and how broad a ruling is, how many groups are going to claim they are affiliated with a church, including the Satanic Temple or what have you, however loose that relationship is, just to get out of paying some general tax. Like I can't, all these money-making organizations or charities that want to preserve whatever money they have in donations, why wouldn't they do that? It sounds like it would be a business decision at that point. So, yeah, it could be really bad. I'm not even worried about the Satanic Temple so much as I'm worried about hospitals and colleges that are affiliated loosely with a religion that are just saying, well, this is an easy way for us not to have to pay money, so let's not do it. Like you can't rely on religious organizations to do the right thing on their own. Like you got to force them to do it. Any other questions here? I think that might be it. All right. Thank you so much for watching. You can subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. Like I said at the beginning of this, oh, and you could support the channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. I will not be here next Friday, but I will be back next Saturday. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, however you're going to celebrate it. But it's apparently not your holiday based on a story from earlier this year. So maybe you're not doing anything because you don't own the season. It's not yours. But have a good one. And I will talk to you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.